Jake Morrison had been floating through space for 3 weeks without finding anything worth his time. His small salvage ship, the Rusty Star, hummed quietly as it moved through the asteroid belt. He was getting tired of eating the same food, packets, and staring at empty space through his cockpit window. Then his scanner started beeping like crazy. "What the heck is that?" Jake muttered, leaning forward to check his screen. Something big was floating about 2 miles away, hidden behind a large asteroid. It wasn't showing up on his regular scans, which was weird. Most ships had metal parts that his equipment could easily spot. Jake pushed the throttle forward and steered around the asteroid. What he saw made his jaw drop. A ship, unlike anything he'd ever seen, was drifting in the darkness. It looked like someone had mixed a seashell with a crystal cave. The hull curved in smooth waves, and parts of it seemed to glow with a soft blue light even though it was clearly damaged. "Holy cow," Jake whispered. "What kind of ship is this?" He'd been salvaging wrecked ships for 15 years. He knew every human design, every corporate model, even the experimental stuff from the outer colonies. This thing didn't match anything in his database. The computer couldn't even tell him what it was made of. Jake suited up and grabbed his tools. If this was some kind of alien tech, it could be worth a fortune. More importantly, there might be someone inside who needed help. He'd rather be known as the guy who saved a life than the guy who got rich off someone's misery. The airlock on the strange ship was easy enough to figure out, even though the controls looked like glowing mushrooms instead of buttons. Jake touched one, and the door slid open with a sound like wind chimes. Inside, the ship was even weirder. The walls seemed to pulse with that same blue light, and the floor felt soft under his boots, like walking on thick carpet. The air was breathable, according to his suit's readings, so he popped his helmet off. "Hello?" he called out. "Anyone alive in here?" The ship was bigger inside than it looked from outside. Jake walked through corridors that twisted and curved, like they were following some natural pattern instead of straight engineering lines. Emergency lights flickered along the walls, casting strange shadows that made him jumpy. He found what looked like a bridge, though it was hard to tell. Instead of chairs and screens, there were these pod-like structures with crystal displays floating in the air. Most of them were dark and cracked. This ship had definitely been in a fight. "Hello," Jake called again, louder this time. "Is anyone here?" A faint sound came from deeper in the ship. It sounded like humming, but not quite human. Jake followed the noise through more twisting hallways until he reached a room that made him stop and stare. In the center of the room was a chamber filled with glowing liquid, and floating inside that liquid was a person. Well, sort of a person. She looked human in the basic shape, but her skin was a beautiful blue color with silver patterns that moved across her arms and face like living tattoos. Her hair was long and dark, floating around her head in the liquid. She was wearing some kind of tight-fitting suit that looked like it was made from the same material as the ship. Jake's heart started pounding. This was definitely an alien, and she was definitely alive. Her chest was moving up and down slowly like she was sleeping. The chamber had controls that looked similar to the airlock. Jake studied them for a minute, trying to figure out which one would wake her up safely. He didn't want to accidentally hurt her. "Okay, here goes nothing," he said, and pressed what looked like the biggest button. The liquid started draining out of the chamber. As it emptied, the woman's eyes snapped open. They were a bright silver color that seemed to glow in the dim light. She looked right at Jake, and he felt like she was seeing straight through him. The chamber door slid open and she stepped out, dripping with the glowing liquid. She moved like a cat, graceful and ready to fight or run at any second. She said something in a language that sounded like singing mixed with clicking sounds. Jake held up his hands to show he wasn't armed. "Hey, it's okay, I'm here to help. My name is Jake." She tilted her head, studying him. Then she touched something on her suit, and a small device on her collar started glowing. "You helped me," she said, though her voice sounded strange, like it was coming through water. "Yeah, I found your ship. It looked pretty beat up. Are you hurt?" She looked down at herself, then back at him. "I am functional. You are human. Guilty as charged. What's your name?" "I am Zara Kethavar. captain of the Stellar Reaper. She gestured toward the damaged walls around them. This was my ship. Was? What happened to it? Zara's face darkened, and those silver patterns on her skin started moving faster. The hegemony. They destroyed my crew, my ship, everything. She looked at Jake with new interest. But you came for me. Why? Jake shrugged. Seemed like the right thing to do. I couldn't just leave you floating out here. Interesting. Zara walked around him in a slow circle like she was sizing him up. Most would have taken what they could carry and left. But you risked yourself for a stranger. Not that big a risk. Your ship's life support was still working. You did not know that when you entered. Jake realized she was right. He'd taken a chance without really thinking about it. I guess I didn't think that hard about it. Zara stopped in front of him and put her hand on his shoulder. Her touch was warm, and he could feel a slight tingling sensation through his shirt. You have honor, she said. This is rare among the stars. Thanks, I think. Listen, we should probably get out of here. I don't know how much longer your ship's going to hold together. Agreed. But first, I must retrieve something important. Zara walked to one of the broken displays and pressed her hand against it. Part of the wall slid away, revealing a small chamber. Inside was a glowing crystal about the size of Jake's fist. What's that? Information. Very dangerous information. The hegemony killed my crew to get this, but they failed. She tucked the crystal inside her suit. Now we must leave, as you said. They made their way back through the damaged ship to Jake's airlock. As they stepped aboard the Rusty Star, Zara looked around with obvious disappointment. This is your vessel? Don't judge her by her looks. She's gotten me out of more tight spots than I can count. Zara sat down in the co-pilot seat and immediately started examining the controls. Primitive, but functional. You maintain it well. Thanks. I think. Jake started the engines and began backing away from the wreck. So where do you want me to drop you off? Drop me off? Zara looked confused. Yeah, like at a space station or something. Somewhere you can contact your people. My people are dead. My ship is destroyed. I have nowhere to go. She looked at him with those intense silver eyes. But you saved my life. By the laws of my people, you have claimed salvage rights. Salvage rights to what? To me. Jake nearly choked on the coffee he was sipping. What now? You pulled me from the wreckage. I am yours now, if you prove worthy. Okay, hold up. I'm not looking to own anybody. I just helped you because it was the right thing to do. Zara smiled, and Jake noticed her teeth were slightly sharper than human teeth. You misunderstand, I do not speak of slavery. I speak of partnership, of bonding. You have shown courage and honor. These are qualities my people value in a mate. Jake's face turned red. A mate? Like a dating mate? Something far deeper than your human concept of dating. But first you must prove yourself worthy through trials of strength and wit. Before Jake could ask what that meant, his ship's alarm started blaring. 3 large ships had just appeared on his scanner, and they were coming fast. Hegemony patrol vessels, Zara said, her voice turning cold. They followed my trail. Can they track us? They can track me. The crystal I carry has a unique energy signature. Jake looked at the approaching ships, then at Zara. She was beautiful, mysterious, and apparently being hunted by some kind of space police. Getting involved with her was probably the worst idea he'd ever had. Well, he said, pushing the engines to full power. I've made worse decisions. Hold on tight. The Rusty Star shot forward into the asteroid field, with 3 military ships, in hot pursuit. Jake had no idea what he'd gotten himself into, but for the first time in years he felt truly alive. Behind him, Zara was checking her strange weapons and smiling like she was looking forward to a fight. This should be interesting, she said. Jake gripped the controls as his ship dove between 2 massive asteroids. The hegemony ships were right behind them, their weapons lighting up the darkness with deadly energy beams. One blast hit the asteroid next to them, sending chunks of rock spinning in all directions. "They're not messing around," Jake said through gritted teeth. Zara had moved to the weapons console and was doing things to his systems that he didn't even know were possible. Lights were flashing that had never flashed before, and his ship's computer was making sounds he'd never heard. "Your weapons are weak," she said, not looking up from her work. "But they will serve. Hey, those weapons have saved my life plenty of times. Against pirates and smugglers, perhaps. These are military vessels with advanced shielding." Another blast rocked the ship, and Jake had to fight to keep control. "Then what do you suggest we do? I'm open to ideas here." Zara's hands moved across the controls like she was playing some kind of musical instrument. "We use what you humans call cunning, and what my people call survival instinct." She did something that made Jake's ship suddenly stop and spin around to face their pursuers. Before he could ask what she was doing, she fired all their weapons at once, not at the hegemony ships, but at a huge asteroid between them. The asteroid cracked and exploded, sending thousands of rocks flying in all directions. The hegemony ships had to scatter to avoid being hit, giving Jake and Zara precious time to escape deeper into the asteroid field. "That was brilliant," Jake said, steering between the floating debris. "It was basic tactics. Any competent warrior would have done the same." "Well, I'm a salvager, not a warrior." Zara looked at him with those intense silver eyes. "Perhaps, but you think quickly under pressure. This is a valuable trait." They flew in relative silence for a while, weaving between asteroids and trying to stay ahead of their pursuers. Finally, Jake found a hollow inside a large asteroid where they could hide and let their engines cool down. "Okay," Jake said, turning to face Zara. "I think it's time you explained what's really going on here. Who are these hegemony people, and why do they want that crystal so badly?" Zara was quiet for a moment, staring out at the stars through the cockpit window. "The hegemony calls itself a peacekeeping force. They say they bring order to the galaxy, but what they really bring is slavery. Slavery? They take over entire worlds and force the people to work for them. They strip planets of resources and leave nothing behind. My homeworld was one of the first they conquered." Jake could hear the pain in her voice. "What happened to your people?" "Those who submitted became workers. Those who resisted were eliminated. I was off-world when it happened, serving on a merchant vessel. When I returned, my family, my friends, everyone I had ever known was gone. I'm sorry. That's horrible." Zara nodded. "I became a pirate because it was the only way to fight back. For 10 years, I raided their supply ships and freed their prisoners. But they were always too strong, too organized." She pulled the glowing crystal from her suit and held it up to the light. "Until I found this." "What is it exactly?" "Information. Plans for something called Project Mindbridge. The hegemony has developed a way to control people's thoughts directly, not just influence them, but actually take over their minds completely." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "That's terrifying. With this technology, they would not need armies anymore. They could simply turn entire populations into willing servants. No more resistance, no more rebellion, just perfect obedience. And that crystal contains the plans? Everything. How the technology works, where it's being built, when they plan to use it first. This information could help the free worlds prepare a defense, or even destroy the project entirely." Jake looked at the crystal, then back at Zara. "So when you said I had salvage rights to you, I meant that by saving my life you became responsible for helping me complete my mission. In my culture, when someone saves a warrior in battle, they become bonded to that warrior's cause. And if I don't want to be bonded to your cause?" Zara's expression became serious. "Then you are free to leave me at the nearest station, and I will find another way. But I must warn you, the hegemony will not stop hunting this information. Anyone who has seen it becomes a target." Jake realized what she was saying. "So I'm already in this, whether I like it or not." "I am afraid so. I'm sorry, I did not ask you to save me." Jake was quiet for a long moment, thinking. His life as a simple salvager was over. He could try to run, but these hegemony people sounded like they had resources everywhere. Or he could help Zara and maybe make a real difference in the galaxy. Tell me more about this bonding thing, he said finally. Zara looked surprised. You wish to know? If we're going to be working together, I should understand what that means to your people. Bonding is not just partnership. It is the joining of two lives into something stronger than either could be alone. Bonded pairs share thoughts, emotions, even physical abilities to some degree. That sounds intense. It is not done lightly. Both partners must prove themselves worthy through trials of courage, wisdom, and loyalty. The process can take months or even years. And you think I might be worthy? Zara studied his face carefully. You risked your life to save a stranger. You chose to fight beside me against overwhelming odds rather than surrender me to save yourself. These are signs of a strong character. I just did what felt right. Exactly. Many people know what is right but lack the courage to act. You act without hesitation. Jake's ship computer beeped a warning. The hegemony ships had found their hiding spot and were closing in fast. Looks like we'll have to continue this conversation later, Jake said, firing up the engines. Wait, Zara said, putting her hand on his arm. That same tingling sensation ran through him. There is something you should know. If we are to survive this, you must trust me completely. I am going to do things that may seem strange or dangerous. What kind of things? My species has abilities that humans do not. Enhanced reflexes, limited telepathy, the ability to interface directly with certain technologies. If you see me do something unusual, do not be afraid. Unusual how? Before she could answer, the hegemony ships opened fire. This time they weren't trying to capture them. They were shooting to destroy. Zara closed her eyes and placed both hands on the ship's control panel. Suddenly, Jake felt like he wasn't flying alone anymore. It was as if someone else was helping him steer, someone who could see the enemy's moves before they made them. Turn left now, Zara said without opening her eyes. Jake turned left, just as an energy beam passed through the space where they had been a second before. Dived toward the spinning asteroid. Jake dove, and another blast missed them by inches. How are you doing that? I am reading their targeting computers. My people developed this ability to survive in a hostile galaxy. With Zara's guidance, Jake flew through the asteroid field like he'd been doing it his whole life. They dodged weapons fire, slipped through impossible gaps, and gradually left their pursuers behind. Finally, they reached the edge of the asteroid field where Jake's ship could jump to hyperspace. Where do we go now? Jake asked. Tortuga Station. It is a haven for those who oppose the hegemony. We can find allies there. And after that? Zara opened her eyes and looked at him. After that, we changed the galaxy. Jake activated the hyperdrive, and they disappeared into the stars, leaving the hegemony ships far behind. He still didn't fully understand what he'd gotten himself into, but for the first time in his life he felt like he was part of something important. Beside him, Zara was already planning their next move. The crystal in her suit pulsed with a soft light, carrying secrets that could free entire worlds or doom them to eternal slavery. The real adventure was just beginning. Tortuga Station looked like someone had built a city inside a giant asteroid and then forgot to make it pretty. Pipes and cables ran everywhere. Neon signs flickered in a dozen different languages, and the air smelled like engine fuel mixed with alien spices. Jake had heard stories about this place, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. Stay close to me, Zara said as they walked through the crowded docking bay. And whatever happens, do not show fear. The pirates here can smell weakness. From across the station, Jake nodded, trying to look confident while his heart pounded in his chest. Every person they passed looked like they could kill him with their bare hands. Some weren't even human. He saw a creature with 4 arms fixing a ship engine, another with blue fur and glowing eyes haggling over supplies, and something that looked like a walking tree discussing weapons with a group of scarred humans. How do you know this place? Jake asked. I have been coming here for years. It is the closest thing to a home I have had since my world was destroyed. They made their way through the maze of corridors toward what Zara called the Great Hall. Jake could hear the noise long before they reached it, Voices, music, laughter, and the occasional sound of something breaking. The great hall was enormous, carved out of the solid rock of the asteroid. Hundreds of tables filled the space, with pirates of every species eating, drinking, and telling stories. The walls were covered with flags, weapons, and what looked like trophy collections from successful raids. "Captain Zara," a voice boomed from across the room. A massive man with a metal arm and intricate tattoos covering his face pushed through the crowd toward them. Behind him came a woman with bright green hair and scars across her cheek, and a slim figure whose species Jake couldn't identify. "Captain Torvin," Zara said, clasping the big man's remaining flesh hand. "I heard the hegemony destroyed your ship. They destroyed the Stellar Reaper, but they did not destroy me. I live to fight another day." Torvin looked at Jake with curious eyes. "And who is this? He does not look like crew." "This is Jake Morrison. He saved my life and retrieved important hegemony intelligence." The green-haired woman stepped forward. "Intelligence? What kind of intelligence?" "The kind that could end their expansion forever, Captain Vera." More pirates gathered around as word spread. Soon Jake found himself surrounded by some of the most dangerous people in the galaxy, all staring at him like he was some kind of curiosity. "If he saved your life," said the slim figure in a voice that sounded like wind chimes, "then he has earned respect. But if he wishes to stand among pirates, he must prove himself according to our ways." Zara nodded. "Captain Nixel speaks truth. Jake Morrison, you have shown courage and honor, but our laws require trials before you can be accepted as my bonded partner." "Bonded partner?" Torvin laughed, a sound like rocks falling down a mountain. "The great Captain Zara wishes to bond with a human salvager? This should be entertaining." Jake felt his face get hot. "What kind of trials?" "3 tests, Vera explained, sitting down at a nearby table and motioning for the others to join her. "Strength, to prove you can protect your partner in battle. Wisdom, to show you can make good decisions under pressure. And loyalty, to demonstrate that your word means something. And if I fail, then you are free to leave," Nixal said. "But you cannot claim partnership with one of our captains. Our bonds are sacred. They cannot be formed lightly." Jake looked at Zara. "What do you think? Should I try?" "The choice is yours. But know that if you succeed, you will gain not just me as a partner, but the respect and protection of every pirate in this room. We take care of our own." Jake thought about his old life, flying alone through space, salvaging scraps, never really belonging anywhere. Then he looked around at these fierce, independent people who had found family among the stars. "All right," he said. "I'll do it." The pirates cheered and started clearing space in the center of the hall. Word spread quickly, and soon it seemed like half the station had come to watch. The first trial was combat. Jake had to face 3 different opponents in hand-to-hand fighting. The rules were simple: stay standing, fight fair, and don't give up. His first opponent was a human pirate about his own size but with much more experience. Jake got knocked down twice before he figured out the man's pattern and managed to land a solid punch that ended the fight. The second opponent was the four-armed alien he'd seen earlier. That fight lasted longer and hurt more, but Jake used his smaller size to stay out of reach and tire his opponent out. The third fight was against Vera herself. She was fast, skilled, and didn't go easy on him just because he was new. Jake barely managed to stay conscious, but he never gave up. And eventually the other pirates called it a draw. "You fight like someone who refuses to quit," Torvin said, helping Jake to his feet. "That is good. Pirates who give up easily do not live long." The second trial was a test of wisdom. Jake had to solve a complex problem involving a theoretical pirate raid. 3 ships, limited supplies, unknown enemy strength, and civilian hostages to consider. He had 1 hour to come up with a plan that the other captains would approve. Jake drew on everything he'd learned as a salvager. He knew ships, he understood logistics, and he'd gotten good at thinking his way out of tight spots. His plan wasn't the most aggressive, but it minimized casualties while still achieving the mission objectives. "Careful and clever," Nixal observed. He thinks like someone who values life, not just victory. The final trial was loyalty. Jake had to publicly swear an oath to defend his crewmates, even at the cost of his own life. But more than that, he had to mean it. The assembled pirates had ways of knowing when someone was lying. Jake stood in the center of the hall and spoke, from his heart. He talked about how Zara had trusted him in battle, how these people had accepted him despite being an outsider, and how he wanted to be part of something bigger than himself. When he finished, the hall was quiet for a long moment. Then Torvin started slow clapping, and soon the entire room was applauding. "You speak truth," Vera said. "We accept you." Zara stepped forward, and Jake saw something in her silver eyes that hadn't been there before. Pride, maybe, or something deeper. "By the ancient laws of my people and the codes of the Pirate Brotherhood," she said in a voice that carried across the entire hall, "I claim Jake Morrison as my chosen partner and co-captain." She placed her hand on his chest, and he felt that familiar tingling sensation, but stronger now. For just a moment he could sense her emotions. Respect, affection, and something that might have been love. "And I accept," Jake said, placing his hand over hers. The pirates erupted in celebration. Drinks appeared, music started playing, and Jake found himself being congratulated by people who had been complete strangers an hour ago. As the party continued around them, Zara pulled Jake aside to a quieter corner of the hall. "You did well," she said. "Better than I expected. Thanks. Though I feel like I got lucky a few times. Luck is part of survival. But you also showed real courage and honor. My people would be proud to call you family." "Your people?" Zara's expression grew sad. "Those who remain are scattered across the galaxy. Most have given up hope of ever returning home. But perhaps with the information we carry, we can give them something to fight for again." Jake squeezed her hand. "We'll figure it out. Together." "Together," she agreed and smiled. Later that night, as they prepared to leave Tortuga Station, Jake realized his life had changed completely. He wasn't just a salvager anymore. He was a pirate captain, bonded to an alien warrior, carrying secrets that could change the fate of entire worlds. It should have been terrifying. Instead, for the first time in his life, he felt like he truly belonged somewhere. The real test would come when they faced the hegemony again. But whatever happened, he wouldn't be facing it alone. Jake woke up to the sound of alarms screaming throughout Tortuga Station. Emergency lights were flashing red, and he could hear people running in the corridors outside their quarters. "What's happening?" he asked, sitting up quickly. Zara was already putting on her armor, moving with the quick efficiency of someone who had woken up to danger many times before. "The hegemony has found us. They must have tracked the crystal's energy signature after all." Jake pulled on his clothes and grabbed his weapon. Through the small window in their room, he could see massive ships surrounding the asteroid station. These weren't the patrol vessels they had faced before. These were full military warships, bristling with weapons. "How many ships?" Zara asked, checking her strange alien weapons. "At least a dozen. Maybe more." Jake's stomach dropped. "This isn't a patrol. This is an invasion force." They rushed to the Great Hall, where Captain Torvin was shouting orders to a crowd of pirates. His metal arm gleamed as he pointed at a tactical display showing the enemy positions. "They have us surrounded," he announced. "But that just means we know where they all are. We've faced worse odds before." "Not like this," Captain Vera said, her green hair wild from sleep. "They brought a full battle fleet. They really want that crystal." All eyes turned to Zara. She pulled the glowing crystal from her suit and held it up for everyone to see. "This contains the plans for Project Mindbridge," she said loudly enough for the entire hall to hear. "A weapon that can control people's minds. If the hegemony gets it back, they will be unstoppable." "Then we make sure they don't get it," Torvin declared. "We fight." The pirates roared their agreement, but Jake could see the worry in their faces. This wasn't a raid or a quick strike. This was a war, and they were outnumbered. The first attack came 20 minutes later. Hegemony assault troops breached the station's outer hull in multiple places. The pirates fought back fiercely, but they were being pushed deeper into the station with each wave. Jake found himself fighting alongside Zara in the main corridor. Her movements were incredible to watch. She seemed to know where every enemy was going to be before they got there. When she fired her weapon, she never missed. When she moved, it was like she was dancing through the battle. "How do you do that?" Jake asked during a brief pause between attacks. "I can sense their intentions," she replied, reloading her weapon. "My people evolved this ability to survive, but it takes a lot of energy." As if to prove her point, Jake noticed she was breathing harder than usual, and those silver patterns on her skin were flickering instead of glowing steadily. The next wave of hegemony troops was bigger and better armed. Jake and Zara found themselves trapped in a side corridor, with no way out. Enemy soldiers were advancing from both directions. "This doesn't look good," Jake said, checking his weapon's charge level. "No, it does not." Zara looked at him with those intense silver eyes. "Jake, there is something I must tell you. If we are to survive this, we need to complete our bonding. Now? Now? In the middle of a battle? The bonding process will link our minds and bodies. We will be able to share our abilities, our strength, our life force itself. It is the only way we can fight our way out of this." Enemy weapons fire started getting closer. They had maybe 2 minutes before the soldiers reached them. "What do I need to do?" Jake asked. Zara took his hands in hers. "Trust me completely. Do not resist what you feel." She pressed her forehead against his, and suddenly Jake's world exploded with sensation. He could feel Zara's thoughts mixing with his own, her memories flowing through his mind like a river. He saw her childhood on a world of crystal cities and singing forests. He felt her pain when the hegemony destroyed everything she loved. He experienced her years of fighting and surviving in space. At the same time, she was seeing his memories, his lonely childhood, his years of drifting through space, his decision to save her from the wreckage. He felt her surprise at how isolated he had been, and her determination to make sure he never felt alone again. But it was more than just sharing memories. Jake could feel his reflexes getting faster, his vision becoming sharper. He could sense the enemy soldiers approaching just like Zara could, and she was gaining something from him too. His technical knowledge, his understanding of how human-built systems worked, his instinct for finding creative solutions to problems. "Amazing," Zara whispered. "You have such a strong mind." Jake could feel her strength flowing into him, and his own determination flowing into her. They were still two separate people, but they were also something new, something stronger. The hegemony soldiers rounded the corner, weapons ready. But Jake and Zara were ready too. They moved together like they had been fighting as a team for years. When Jake ducked left, Zara was already covering his movement. When she rolled right, he was already laying down covering fire. They could anticipate each other's actions because they were sharing the same thoughts. The enemy soldiers didn't stand a chance. Jake found himself moving faster than he ever had before. His aim was perfect, and he seemed to know exactly where each enemy would be. Beside him, Zara fought with even more skill than before, using Jake's technical knowledge to disable the soldiers' equipment while taking them down. Within minutes, the corridor was clear. But Jake could feel that the bonding process had taken a lot out of both of them. Zara was pale, and he felt dizzy. "Are you okay?" he asked. "The initial bonding is always draining, but we did it. We are truly partners now." Jake could still feel her presence in his mind, warm and comforting. It was strange but not unpleasant, like having someone who understood him perfectly, standing right beside him all the time. They made their way back to the Great Hall, where the battle was still raging. Captain Torvin was wounded but still fighting. Captain Vera had barricaded herself behind an overturned table, firing at enemy troops. "The docking bays are lost," Nixall reported, sliding down behind cover next to them. "They have cut off our escape routes. Then we make new ones," Jake said, surprising himself with his confidence. He pulled out his technical scanner and started studying the station's layout. But now, with Zara's enhanced abilities, he could see things he never would have noticed before. Weak points in the structure, power conduits that could be rerouted, ventilation shafts that could be used for movement. There, he said, pointing to a section of the wall. If we can overload the power coupling behind that panel, it will blow a hole in the outer hull. We can escape through the debris field. That will destroy half the station, Torvin said. Better than letting the hegemony have it, Zara replied. Working together, Jake and Zara fought their way to the power coupling. Jake used his technical knowledge to access the controls while Zara defended them from enemy soldiers. Her alien abilities let her sense attacks coming, while his human intuition helped him find the right combination of settings to create the explosion they needed. "Everyone get to the emergency pods," Jake shouted over the noise of battle. The explosion, when it came, was massive. It tore a huge hole in the station's hull and sent debris flying in all directions. In the chaos, the surviving pirates managed to escape in small ships and emergency pods. Jake and Zara made it to their ship just as the station began breaking apart. As they flew away, Jake looked back at Tortuga Station. It had been a haven for free people, and now it was just floating wreckage. "I'm sorry," he said to Zara. "I know that place was important to you." "Places can be rebuilt," she replied, taking his hand. "What matters is that the people survived. And we still have the crystal." Jake squeezed her hand and felt her emotions through their new bond. Sadness for what was lost, but also hope for what they could build together. "So what happens now?" he asked. Zara smiled, and Jake could feel her determination flowing through their connection. "Now we decrypt this crystal and find out exactly where the hegemony is building their mind control weapon. And then we destroy it." Jake nodded. The battle for Tortuga Station was over, but the real war was just beginning. At least now he wouldn't be fighting it alone. 3 weeks after the destruction of Tortuga Station, Jake and Zara had managed to gather the largest pirate fleet in recent history. Ships of every size and design floated in the shadow of a dead moon, their crews preparing for what everyone knew would be the most important battle of their lives. The crystal had finally revealed all its secrets. Project Mindbridge was being built inside a massive space fortress called the Iron Citadel, hidden in a nebula at the edge of hegemony territory. The weapon was nearly complete, and according to the stolen plans, they were going to test it on a populated world in just 2 days. 53 ships, Captain Torvin reported, his metal arm gleaming as he gestured toward the assembled fleet. "Not nearly enough to take on a fortress that size." "Numbers are not everything," Zara replied, studying the holographic display of their target. "The Iron Citadel is heavily defended, but it has weaknesses. Every fortress does." Jake pointed to a section of the display where energy readings showed unusual patterns. "Look at this. The mind control device requires enormous amounts of power. They've had to route energy from their defensive systems to keep it running." "Which means what?" Vera asked, her green hair tied back for battle. "Which means if we can overload their power grid, we can disable both the weapon and their shields at the same time." Captain Nixall leaned forward, studying the plans with those strange, glowing eyes. "It would require someone to get inside the fortress and access their main computer system directly. A suicide mission." "Not if we work together," Jake said, looking at Zara. Through their bond, he could feel her understanding his plan before he even explained it. "You want to use our connection," she said. "One of us creates a distraction while the other infiltrates the facility." "Exactly. With our mental link, we can coordinate perfectly even when we're separated." Torvin shook his head. "Too dangerous. If one of you is captured, you both become vulnerable." "Everything about this mission is dangerous," Jake replied. "But it's our best chance." The next morning, the pirate fleet moved toward the Iron Citadel. The fortress was even more massive than the stolen plans had suggested. It looked like someone had built a metal mountain in space, bristling with weapons and surrounded by patrol ships. "Beginning the assault," Torvin announced over the communication system. The battle started immediately. Hegemony fighters swarmed, out of the fortress like angry insects while the massive guns on its surface began firing at the pirate ships. The space around the iron citadel lit up with weapons fire and explosions. Jake piloted a small, fast ship toward the fortress, while Zara led the main attack with the larger vessels. Even separated by miles of space, he could feel her presence, in his mind, guiding him through the chaos of battle. Docking Bay 7 is lightly defended. Her voice came through their mental connection, not through the radio. Jake adjusted his course and slipped through the fortress's outer defenses while the hegemony forces were focused on the main fleet. He could feel Zara's concern for his safety, mixed with her own fierce joy as she outmaneuvered enemy ships. Inside the fortress, Jake made his way through corridors filled with hegemony soldiers rushing to battle stations. His bond with Zara let him sense where the guards would be before he encountered them, allowing him to avoid most conflicts. The main computer center was deep inside the fortress, protected by layers of security. But Jake had studied the plans for weeks, and with Zara's enhanced reflexes flowing through their connection, he moved through the facility like he belonged there. Meanwhile, Zara was leading the pirate fleet in a dance of destruction around the fortress. She could feel Jake's progress through their bond, and she timed her attacks to draw attention away from his location. "Captain," one of her crew members called out, "we're taking heavy casualties." "How much longer?" "Not much longer," Zara replied, feeling Jake's excitement as he reached the computer center. Inside the heavily protected room, Jake found himself face to face with the most advanced computer system he had ever seen. Screens covered every wall, showing the status of the mind control weapon and the fortress's defenses. In the center of the room, a massive crystal similar to the one Zara carried pulsed with dark energy. "This must be the control crystal for the mind control device," Jake said aloud, knowing Zara would hear him through their bond. "Be careful," her voice whispered in his mind. "If that crystal is damaged incorrectly, it could explode." Jake approached the central console and began working on the computer system. His technical knowledge, enhanced by Zara's alien intuition, let him navigate the complex controls faster than should have been possible. Outside, the battle was reaching its climax. Several pirate ships had been destroyed, and the fortress's weapons were taking a heavy toll on the fleet. But Zara's tactical brilliance, combined with Jake's technical insights flowing through their bond, kept the pirates fighting effectively. "Jake," Zara's voice was urgent in his mind. "Hegemony reinforcements are coming. You need to finish this now." Jake's fingers flew over the controls. He had found the right sequence to overload the power grid, but he needed to time it perfectly. Too early, and the fortress's backup systems would compensate. Too late, and the arriving reinforcements would overwhelm the pirate fleet. "Almost there," he said, sweat dripping down his face as he worked. Through their bond, he could feel Zara's ship taking damage. She was hurt, but still fighting. Her pain flowed through him, making him work even faster. "Got it," Jake announced, activating the overload sequence. The fortress shuddered as its power grid began failing. Lights flickered throughout the facility, and the massive mind control crystal in the center of the room started pulsing erratically. "The weapon is destabilizing," Jake reported. "I need to get out of here." But as he turned to leave, the door to the computer center slid open, and Admiral Corzon, the hegemony commander who had destroyed Zara's original crew, stepped into the room. "So the famous alien pirate sends her human pet to do her dirty work," the Admiral sneered, pointing a weapon at Jake. Through their bond, Zara felt Jake's danger and her own rage at seeing her old enemy. "That's him," she said through their connection. "The one who killed my crew." Jake could feel Zara's anger flowing through him, but also her strategic mind. "Keep him talking," she advised. "I'm coming for you." "You're too late," Jake told the Admiral, gesturing at the failing systems around them. "The weapon is finished. Your mind control project is over. Perhaps. But at least I can eliminate one more pirate before this facility is destroyed." The Admiral raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the wall behind him exploded inward. Zara burst through the hole, her alien weapons blazing. The Admiral spun to face her, and for a moment the two enemies stared at each other across the room. "You killed my crew," Zara said, her voice cold as space. "And I'll kill you too," the Admiral replied. The fight that followed was intense, but brief. The Admiral was skilled, but he was facing both Zara's alien abilities and Jake's technical cleverness working in perfect coordination. When Zara attacked from one side, Jake was already moving to cut off the Admiral's escape. When Jake created a distraction, Zara was ready to strike. In the end, it was their teamwork that won. While Zara kept the Admiral busy, Jake managed to disable his weapon using the failing computer systems. Zara's final attack ended the fight decisively. "It's over," she said, breathing heavily. "Not yet," Jake replied, looking at the destabilizing crystal. "We need to get everyone out of here. This whole place is going to explode." They fought their way back to Jake's ship as the fortress fell apart around them. The overloaded power grid was causing chain reactions throughout the facility. By the time they reached the docking bay, entire sections of the Iron Citadel were breaking away and drifting into space. The pirate fleet retreated to a safe distance just as the fortress's core finally gave up. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, and when it was over, the Iron Citadel was nothing but scattered debris. "The mind control weapon is destroyed," Vera announced over the fleet communication system, "and we captured several hegemony ships with their crews. More importantly," Torvin added, "we proved that the hegemony can be beaten. Word of this victory will spread to every oppressed world in the galaxy." In the weeks that followed, Jake and Zara's victory did exactly what Torvin had predicted. Rebellions broke out on dozens of hegemony worlds. The pirates found themselves leading a growing movement of free peoples fighting for their independence. Jake and Zara established a new base on a hidden world, where they trained other fighters and planned operations against hegemony targets. Their bond had made them legendary. Stories spread of the human salvager and the alien pirate who fought as one mind in 2 bodies. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Zara asked one evening as they watched the sunset from their new home. Jake thought about it for a moment. His life as a lonely salvager seemed like it had happened to someone else. "No," he said finally. "I was just drifting through space back then, not really living. Now I have a purpose. I have family." Zara smiled and took his hand. Through their bond, he could feel her contentment and her love for him. "And I found something I thought I had lost forever," she said. "Hope for the future." Together they watched the stars come out, planning their next mission.